as we get closer and closer to NBA Finals Game 1, Mavs Celtics on Thursday. I kind of wanted to run through the Celtics defense, what they bring to the table, and how confident you are that the Mavericks can, I don't know, crack the code, but at least put a heavy dent in the code.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes?
What's that?
I heard this 2 weeks ago. Playing the greatest defense in maybe basketball history.
True.
So are we playing a better defense? Because before that series started, I heard from people covering the NBA that this is the best defense in the NBA today, the best defense in somewhat a while since
Minnesota.
Since everything has changed, since kind of the rules of the NBA has changed, this is impossible. Jaden McDaniels is so much better than Lou Dort, which I disagreed with at the time, against Luka. If you're just taking the two guys versus Luka, I'd seen both of them guard Luka and knew which one gave Luka more problems. And so now we move on to Boston, and we're hearing, well, this defense is obviously better than Minnesota's. And I'm like, that wasn't the case 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and see, and I don't know. I would definitely not say obviously better. I wonder if their strengths are, though, in a different position that creates different matchups that could be more problematic. I'm not saying they absolutely will be more problematic, but with Holiday, with White, will that create a different set of issues?
I was watching a TikTok video from LeBron James and JJ Redick's podcast where they were talking about Luka, and they were talking. JJ Redick said, "I don't understand why people keep blitzing Luka on the pick and roll on the screens." He said, "It doesn't make any sense because," and LeBron was like, "I would never do it. I would just say you stay on your guy out there and you just try. You just hold on for dear life and try to defend him individually on it. But you keep people on the shooters because that's where he's really going to kill you. He will find a shooter." He was like, if Tim Hardaway, and this was when they were talking about Hardaway at the time, and he was like, if Tim Hardaway's hitting 6 or 7 threes, you're screwed. He said, when we played him, he throws it to Dante Exum for 5 3-pointers, and we were screwed because he will find the passer, and he's the best passer at it. And so I do wonder if, A, the Celtics have the personnel to not blitz, and also if they say we have to be disciplined in not trying to go after him that way.
I think what becomes tough, which is great because just signed Nico Harrison to an extension today, if you didn't hear earlier. So Nico's going to be around, I don't know how many years, maybe.
It just said multi-year.
Right. Is you could do that. Tyronn Lue did that when he was coaching against Luka, and he did it this year too, but it doesn't work out as well when you had guys getting the ball. Like we saw Dwight Powell, when he got the ball off of that, Dwight Powell threw it to the other team for a layup. It was a great pass if you were rooting for the other team. Is now when he does it, the options on the court are tremendous. Derek Lively getting the ball at the top of the key with nobody on him is making so many great decisions. 9 out of 10 times, Derek Lively makes a great decision in that situation. Gafford, I'll go 50-50 at best on that. So maybe it's better to blitz him when Gafford is going to get the ball. Like you're forcing the ball to the top of the key to Gafford. You don't want to force the ball to Lively in that situation. He makes too many good decisions. But you can have Kyrie get the ball. Like if you double and now you've gone 4-on-3 defense and you get the ball to Kyrie quickly and you can't recover off of the double team and there's only 3 defenders guarding 4 guys and Kyrie is one of the guys on the court who now has the ball, that's 2 or 3 points. You're going to get at least a wide open shot or a layup or dunk. So I do think now is different than going back in time when Tyronn Lue was able to kick the Mavericks out of the playoffs, because it's just a different way to look at who is on the court and what can they do.
Yeah.
And so I do think if Gafford's on the court, maybe blitzing is the right answer. If Lively's on the court, it's not the right answer.
Okay, that's interesting. And I mean, Kevin, when we did that point guard thing, the description, Rob Mahoney's description of Luka was so perfect. With he breaks it down to a granular level before deciding what the proper thing is to do. Like the way he described that was really nice. And then you started to see it during this playoff when you're just like, they've done everything. Every team you've seen has tried to throw different things at Luka, and he figures it out early enough to be like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do whenever these things happen. And again, because he's such a good passer, it makes it even more lethal because he can make those things happen when he's around the basket or not.
Now, I was thinking a little bit more about what you were saying about the Timberwolves, and the thing that immediately fascinated me about that is the Celtics are second in points allowed per possession behind only the Timberwolves. Yeah. But one thing that popped up, they're number 2 in defensive rebounding rate. And so that's another thing to watch because, it's interesting. We talk about defense in terms of like, you might think of it as like one person defending another person, but rebounding feels like it has become a huge part, obviously, of the defensive conversation as well. And so,
well, especially because now there's so many threes. And so there's so many long rebounds. So your guards are more involved in rebounding more than ever in the history of the NBA because of the long rebound that wasn't really the case. Let's just say Dirk Nowitzki and before, 2011 and before. Yes, there were some long rebounds, but long rebounds have become quite common in the NBA today.
And to that point, what to look for in this series, Boston shot 240 more three-pointers than any team in the league this year. Second, the Mavericks. And so that's going to be an odd way to look at it is who's going to control, not the rebounding, who's going to control the medium and long rebound game? Because you're probably going to see a ton of that in this series.
Didn't it feel like, Mike, we were talking about earlier, the limited number of three-pointers in the game in the 2011 run? It almost felt like times you were settling for a three. And now you're not settling you're trying to set up a three-pointer.
It's your go-to.
More often than not.
Yeah.
You'll see guys give up literally uncontested layups to kick the ball to a somewhat contested three, which is crazy to me still today. I can't wrap my brain around you've beat the guy off the dribble. The guy who's helping isn't really helping that hard. And you're like, I don't care. I'm still going to pass it to a three-point shooter instead of taking a contested 3-foot layup and not like a strongly contested 3-foot layup. You'd rather kick it to a guy who's open for 1 second for that quick release three.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of wild is if you break down and if you are inclined to lean into analytics, a contested layup is actually not as efficient as an open three. And so in those instances, kicking it out. But then I think also something you'll see, and this is offensively for the Celtics, which I guess isn't what we're talking about. They're going to do that drive and kick because what that does is that starts defensive rotations. And then you might be able to get the defense off balance and continue to attack them. But yeah, you're right. It's still kind of a wild change that we've had from years past in basketball into the modern iteration of the game.
Which is also interesting, too, because of what the Mavs have developed in their lob. And so it creates, 4 or 5 different options for Luka or Kai whenever he's around the bigs, because if he can get the 2 points, he's willing to settle for that. He's willing to take that because he knows they all add up.
And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated to see, maybe it's just game one, and obviously there's going to be adjustments from there, the defensive matchup, because Boston switches a ton, but they also have Derek White and Drew Holiday, who are second team all defense, but they're very good individual defenders. The movement you're going to see across the court, I am just really curious to see how effective the Mavericks are against it. And to your point about the Minnesota defense, I'm inclined to have a good deal of faith in the Mavericks offense because they're familiar with these types of switches. They're familiar with excellent one-on-one defenders, especially what you've seen in this postseason, and they have excelled against it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, man, the PJ Washingtons, Kevin, the Derek Jones Juniors, that's those three-pointers, their faith in them quickly finding those shots is gonna be a big factor early on in the series.
I'm just writing something down about the 3-point shooting. I'll give you right now.
Okay.
The Celtics only have 2 losses. I'm not going through all their wins. I don't have enough time right now. Since you brought up the 3-point shooting. So when Miami won game 2, 111-101, Miami shot 53.5% from the 3-point line, and the Celtics did shoot this one pretty good. I'd say above average, 37.5. But they lost that game. I need to go through their wins to see if this correlates. The one loss they had to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that was their only other loss in the playoffs so far in game 2, 118-98, was The Cavaliers shot 46.4% from three, and the Celtics shot 22.9%. So they lost the three-point battle pretty bad in both of those games. Now, because the other team shot so well, 37.5%, I'm sure the Celtics will say, if we shoot 37.5% from three for the series, we'll win the championship. But I'm just looking at that, and I need to go through and see how much better did they shoot the three on a percentage basis in their wins, because in their losses, they got creamed in it.
That's a good question, and that should be simpler to find than the other thing I was going to suggest. This will probably take a lot of time, but if people only want to watch basketball, go check this out. One of the things that Boston's defense has, if they have faltered in the postseason, is sometimes straying away from shooters that they're covering, especially when they get caught up in transition. You go back to the Cleveland series. Now, obviously, they've made it to the NBA Finals. They've trucked their way through the playoffs, but you can look at the Cleveland series as a perfect example of plenty of opponents getting open shots. Now, then the next logical thing becomes, well, yeah, do you hit that open shot or not? And I don't want this whole segment to boil down to, well, can the Mavs make their open shots? But there is going to be a lot of opportunity, I think, off of the transition more than anything else to catch Boston potentially switching or whatever else and have some open looks.
I want the Celtics to play Luka and Kyrie one-on-one. Maybe I'll regret saying it after 2 or 3 games and go, shoot, our other guys aren't scoring at all or doing this. I think, and I don't care about Drew Holiday, I get how great he is and how great some of their other defenders are. Drew Holiday is outstanding. They have other guys that are very good. I think if you play Luka and Kyrie one-on-one for a whole game, like Minnesota tried to do at times, you're going to give up 70 points to those two guys.
Right.
And now if you look at the pace that the Celtics play at, if the Mavericks can get 40 points from their reserves, from their role players, I should say, not reserves, from their role players, I think the Mavs will win the majority of those games. If the Mavs get to 110 against the pace that the Celtics like playing at, I think the Mavs win the championship.
Do you guys think Derek White will spend a lot of time guarding Luka? And since we've talked about who he can bully more than others, do you think, Derek White's a really good player, but do you think Luka can bully him?
Kevin, I'm just looking at Iztok Franco's stuff. He's from D Magazine, I believe. And he said in the regular season they put KP and Horford on Derek Jones Jr., PJ, and Maxey, and Tatum on Lively and Gafford. And
because they wanted that switch.
Yeah, so that they could do that. So I think Derek White's that likely option. And we discussed yesterday the physical. He's a more physically gifted.
He's 6'4" and strong.
Yeah,
long and skinny, has never worked against. Like, I'd love for the national people doing Kendrick Perkins, Austin Rivers, Stephen A. Smith. I'm not smart. I might be smarter than Stephen A. Smith, to be honest, when it comes to basketball. Like, my opinion.
Woo!
I'm not going to say I'm smarter than former NBA basketball players with 10 years in the league.
Sure.
Listen to me on this one. Long and lanky does not bug Luka that much. It's the strong guy that bugs Luka. They can be as tall as Luka. They can be 2-3 inches shorter than Luka. The guys that Luka struggles to bully is the guys that give him, it doesn't shut him down, but those are the guys that give him more issues than the long, lanky, skinny guys.
So I do. Does that mean that Brown and Kai is the matchup that they're going to try and keep those two?
Don't forget Drew Holiday.
Yeah,
okay.
And I was going to say keep is a tough one because I do think you're going to see a lot of variations off of that very quickly. One more thing I wanted to throw out there.
Can I throw this out real quick with the guarding Luka and guarding especially Luka, but Kai a little bit, here's the thing that kind of sucks. The Celtics have a built-in reputation. Holiday's been doing this for over a decade. Anthony Edwards hasn't. Jaden McDaniels hasn't. Rudy has, but there was little reputation with Minnesota and the referees. There's a lot of reputation with allowing Drew Holiday to do whatever he wants, and it's not a foul because he's great defensively. So I do think that at times there's going to be complaining. But the tough thing is the refs go off a reputation, and at times the Celtics are able to do things based off of their reputation that other teams would get called fouls on.
And Mike, I don't think you're going to love this number then, because that actually works exactly with what you're saying. The Celtics are number one in limiting opponent free throw rate. So when you talk about reputation, the stats are there to back it up as well.